a little bit about Randy Girard's presentation before he makes it here. One of the things that it's important to see that this is impacting all levels of government, county, city, township. And you know, sometimes challenges like this present opportunities. And one of the things that could be a good opportunity growing out of this is the cooperation between all of the units of government and levels of government pulling together in this way, which continue on in many other ways. There's a lot of opportunity for cooperation and intergovernmental cooperation. I think this could get us moving in that direction. So sometimes adversity has positive consequences. With that, and as things have quieted down now, I'll introduce Randy Girard, who's Township Manager in Marquette Township.
Thanks, Bob. Mr. Stucco, I'd like to have him stand up again because I'm going to say what he said. I hope all of you had a chance to pick one of these up on your way in. The comments I'm going to make are specific to Marquette Township only. Marquette Township in Marquette County, you may not recognize it, but Marquette County is made up of 19 townships and 3 cities. That's Marquette County. We are one township out of that, and these are the impacts from the taxes that we collect from our businesses only. So everybody else is doing the same thing. Before I go much further, I know that I've got at least 4 board members here, and I'd like to have them stand up. Trustee Durant is here. I'm now Supervisor Durant. I'm used to calling her trustee. Supervisor Durant, I know Trustee Pompo is here someplace. Trustee LaRue and Trustee Marks were the 4 that I saw. It's important you recognize these folks because these are the folks who gave us the authority to challenge this, to fight this case. We're the first township to really take this on, challenge a tax tribunal decision, knowing we were going to lose at the tax tribunal, because believe it or not, they told us we were going to lose before we even filed. They told us that they had had enough of these cases before the judge who was going to hear our case told us, don't even bother filing. I already know what my decision is. And after that meeting with our attorney and our then township supervisor and myself, we went to the board and we said, this is ridiculous. We cannot let this happen in our region. It's just stupid. So anyway, these folks that I just had stand up along with the other 3 board members gave us the authority to challenge to the tax tribunal, knowing that we would have to then appeal to the Court of Appeals and ultimately get to the Supreme Court of Michigan. That's where we wanted to get to. Our opinion is this is not a loophole. Not a loophole at all. There is no loophole. This is a pure misapplication of the law by the tax tribunal. Very simple. Simple as that. In 2010, they changed the rules in the decision out of Novi. Now, in 2010, that might have made sense in Novi and in southeastern Michigan because of the population drain that occurred with the downturn in 2008, factories closing, stores closing, leaving the area. But when these stores left, they put deed restrictions on their buildings. They could not be used for a competitive purpose. So they were converted to churches, they were converted to roller rinks, they were converted to go-kart tracks, all things that have a much lower taxable value. And that was the decision down there. Now maybe that made sense in southeast Michigan in 2010, but it didn't make any sense here. The growing, active, vibrant community, everybody in this region is growing, continue to grow. We've averaged 7 to 10% growth a year for the last 15 years. We did not have a downturn. We've had one dark store, Kmart. Remember that? That's the only big box that's ever closed in this community. And it was turned into what? Kohl's, almost immediately. So we've never had a downturn. We've never had any kind of an issue that would have applied in this area. That was our argument to the tax tribunal. We had an excellent appraiser, Bruce Glosser. You couldn't ask for a better one. They shot him down. He didn't know anything about appraisal, not a thing. We appealed it to the Court of Appeals, knowing we were going to lose because the Court of Appeals process is to review the record from the tax tribunal. So we knew we were going to lose that. We wanted to get the Supreme Court to have them answer the law question, the application of the law, the tax laws. The way taxes are calculated, and I'll use Lowe's as the example. Lowe's came to us when they were developing, and they had a site plan. We sat down with them, went through their site plan, the materials they were using, the construction they were using, the values, and established using what our assessor has to use, state mandated by the Department of Treasury, manual to calculate the value, and you use that. Guess who doesn't have to follow that? The tax tribunal. They don't have to follow the same rules. So a cure here, and it's been mentioned, Greg mentioned the second stage of this is the cure. And the cure, because of proposal A, is to be able to have all of those businesses, all of those communities that either stipulated under the threat from the tax tribunal that we already know our decision, or lost the tax tribunal, to be able to put those businesses back on the tax roll where they're supposed to be, and the tax tribunal rehear those cases under the same rules as the assessors. That's the only way this is going to be cured, to get the money back into the communities. The list that is on this sheet of paper, is there anybody in here that does not use or is not aware of or have a family member that doesn't use any of these services or agencies that are listed here? Raise your hands if there's somebody who doesn't deal with any of the things that are on this list. Nobody. So it impacts everyone. The library was the very first one that actually had an impact. They had to close on Sundays. The rest of us, you won't see it. If you're a resident of Marquette Township, you're not going to see this until late 2016 or 2017, because it won't impact until then. By then, our fund balances will be drained from refunds and from reduced revenue. These folks came into the community pledging to be a financial participant. After the fact, have withdrawn. 60% reduction in our revenue stream. 60%. There's only one place that can be made up if it isn't from the dark stores. It's you folks. If you want to keep the services, you're going to have to pay for them. Simple as that. Law enforcement, library, senior services, Mark Tran, Valenti Medical Care Facility, right on down the line. Those are all our tax dependent. So, I think that's my 5 minutes. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Randy. In many respects, Marquette Township is sort of the canary in the mine that, you can see what's happening there, and it just is devastating and is spreading throughout the county. Our next speaker is speaking on behalf of police, Mike Klein, who is Under Sheriff of Marquette County.
Gary Johnson and I were sitting over here talking, and we said the next time we have to go to Lansing, we're bringing Mr. Stucco with us. I mean, I feel like having a big bambino right now. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. We, on this panel, I'm going to get this out right away, because for the last 7 months, I've been part of this great group of people that have taken the time out of their busy schedule to look out for the benefit of all of you, for the county. And I don't know how many meetings we've been to over the last 7 months. So this has been going on for years. I've only been part of it for the last 7 months. What they do for us is amazing, and that's the biggest thing I took out of this. It's going to be a team effort to win this battle, and we're all going to win it together, because we're all going to have this team concept. Thanks all of you. Okay, I was doing some stats here. Does anybody know how many square miles Marquette County is? Anybody? Yeah, somebody. I was going to say somebody dropped a colorful metaphor, lots, and then 1,873 square miles. How many miles of roads in Marquette County? This number was a lot easier, 1,573 miles. This is Marquette County, okay? Does anybody have any idea how many service calls we had this year or last year so far? Because I have a whole boatload of numbers for everybody, okay? Now I'm probably not going to be able to find it because I'm a little nervous. Okay, what's that? And you cut it. I'm armed, yeah, okay. Okay. Police officers and deputies in Marquette County have responded to 32,110 calls for just police service in 2015 so far. We haven't counted November or December yet. Okay? I don't know about you, I was amazed by that big number, okay? 32,000 calls. Well, what do you think is going to happen if people get their 40% refund back and they go to pay for services such as law enforcement, right? Now, If anybody's not familiar with it, Marquette County has to fund 75% or 75% of their budget goes to mandated programs. Is everybody aware of that? So that leaves 25% to fund everything else, which includes road patrol. Well, what happens if we get 40% of that back? So we get 25% of the budget, you know, to cover all the other non-mandated. We take 40% of that out. What happens after that? So we have 12 general funded road positions, 9 road deputies, 2 court security officers, and 1 detective position. I can only speculate what's gonna happen. If we lose all this refund, or you give these refunds back, we are gonna lose police services. I can speak for the county, but I'm talking, this is gonna affect everybody throughout the county. Every agency, every municipality is gonna have to deal with this problem, right? I've heard people say there's too much law enforcement in Marquette County, there's not enough law enforcement in Marquette County. How many people have made a call to Central Dispatch and it takes hours for somebody to respond to their call? And we're very sorry about that, but I can only tell you, there's just nobody there to do it, okay? Now, when I say this team effort concept, I talked to Lieutenant Michelin from the State Police Post, talked to him often, I talked to him again today, and we had a meeting back in June, and he sat down with Captain Lemire and I trying to discuss how we were gonna solve the problem with 24-hour road patrol coverage in Marquette County, which currently the Sheriff's Department does not have. They missed over 40 shifts in June alone, Michigan State Police. This is not bashing in any way. What I'm telling you is a factual thing. They couldn't cover 40 shifts. Why? For a variety of reasons. Sick time, training, injuries, okay? Where are you gonna make that up? You might have 1 state trooper, you might have 1 deputy for 1,873 square miles. You know, it could take an hour to go from Big Bonds to Big Bay. Okay, I'm just saying. As an example, okay, and if you have less road coverage, it's gonna take even longer for those people to get to respond to your needs. Okay? Well, you're flagging me, aren't you? I'm gonna say what Randy said, I'm armed. All right. A couple other things that have happened recently, if you've heard in the news, the youth home is slated to be closed. This is a direct result of the dark store initiative. 26 people are gonna be out of a job. That's just what happened so far. For the budget next year, search and rescue, God bless them all, most of that is volunteers. And make no mistake about it, we don't do a lot of stuff at the Sheriff's Office without our volunteers. Okay? They make it up. They're the people that want to be there. I'll take 1,000 of them any day of the week. They're there because they want to be, not because they're paid to be. Okay? So, $5,700 has been cut out of the budget next year for search and rescue, which is primarily volunteer anyway. Direct result of the Dark Star Initiative. Okay? You're giving me the red one. That means stop. I got it. All right, I have other numbers. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you for coming. We're hoping for a packed house. We got it. Thank you.
Okay, we're on a roll here. Now we have Fire EMS 911, Gary Johnson, who's the Fire Chief of Chocolate Township.
Thank you. And my day job is manager of the 911 center for Marquette County. Marquette County 911 and most of your fire agencies, these are mandated services that we need to have, we have to provide. We are facing a potential of over $100,000 loss to our budget for 911. That's about 10% of the budget. We're answering 100,000 phone calls, dispatching 46,000 incidents a year with 12 people, okay? We have 2 people on minimum every shift, occasionally 3. There's no way that you can handle that call volume by reducing our staff. Our equipment that we need to use, we have a lot of fixed contracts. So there's just really no room, and there is no waste, I can assure you that, in what we're doing with 911, which means this loss is gonna be passed on to you folks. But it's gonna be passed on to you folks in more ways than just simply dollars. As Under Sheriff Klein said, if we start to lose more police officers, that's a longer wait for service. We already have times when someone calls in and it'll take 3 hours to get them a police officer for a larceny from their house or something like that. Can you imagine that that's gonna go to a day, maybe 2 days before we can get somebody to you? I mean, that's just not right. And if you wonder what kind of impact the commercial districts have in our community, I looked at just the 41 corridor in Marquette Township, because obviously that's gonna be the biggest and the busiest, and that's where this has all started from those box stores. How many people have dialed 911 in the last year? How many of you have had police, fire, EMS to your house? I bet you a very small number. We had just under 2,000 responses just on the 41 corridor last year in Marquette Township. That's just one township out of 19 in the 3 cities. That is just one of the impacts these commercial districts have in our communities as far as public safety goes. Now, I am a volunteer fire chief in Klein Township. And again, with it being a volunteer, our major cost is not personnel. We spend about $30,000 a year on personnel. That's not even one full-time firefighter. Okay, our biggest cost is equipment. And the type of equipment we have and that expense is directly tied to the community we have to protect. So our fire truck may look very similar to the one that's in the city of Marquette or the one that's in Marquette Township, but I can assure you they're not the same price. Because Chocolate does not have a huge commercial district. We don't have to have as large a pump volume. We don't have to have a water system. We don't have to have a ladder truck. Their costs are far higher than ours in equipment. Also infrastructure. Think about a water system. You don't need 16 or 24-inch water mains to feed a residential neighborhood, but you do if you ever want to have a chance of putting out a fire at a big box store. Well, what kind of cost do you think that is to the community? What happens when one of those breaks? That cost now is going to be passed on to you. They're still needing the services 2,000 times a year, police, fire, and EMS, in one small corridor, a couple miles long in the county. So it is a real problem. And you know, one other thing I will say too, that is an issue that Under Sheriff Klein didn't mention. If we lose police officers, it's not only a delay in getting people out to non-emergency calls, we're putting those fine people at greater risk, okay? That means they don't have backup readily available. So those officers are not gonna hesitate to go to that violent domestic or that armed robbery. And those things do happen in our county. And we're gonna put them at greater risk because that backup that used to be 5 or 10 minutes away could be a half hour away. Ask the city of Munising about what happens when an officer doesn't have readily available backup. Look what happened there. That's gonna happen here. It's something that we need to change because those services are too important, and you know, county governments, local governments aren't gonna have a choice. Where are they gonna get the money? So thank you, and I thank you for your support.
Visit mqtfairshare.org for further information on how the rulings of the Michigan Tax Tribunal are negatively impacting communities across the state and what you can do to help solve this problem.